Welcome to my channel Limelight Leaks. Please share and subscribe and hit the bell icon for new updates. Before Yenko became a name on the side of a really expensive Camaro, it was a man. A man with gasoline in his blood and no interest in following thrills. Don Yenko was born in Pennsylvania in 1927, the son of a Chevrolet car dealer. From the beginning, his life was all about their sipure. But Don didn't just grow up around cars. He knew them from the inside out. Car parts weren't mysteries, they were puzzles. Don Yenko was a master at solving them. By the time he was in his 20s, Yenko had ready-flown P-51 Mustangs for the U.S. Air Force. He wasn't just a pilot. He was a smart daredevil, careful under pressure, smart behind chaos, and that same power followed him into racing. He became a successful Saccharode racer, often changing his own Corvettes and Camaros to beat factory specs. He didn't believe in limits. He believed in power and how to let it loose. While most car dealers weren't thinking about sales numbers, Yenko was in the back shop making engines better. Where others saw cars to sell, he saw potential. The dealership was just a cover. Behind those showroom doors, Yenko was running a secret performance. Shop customers came in expecting a Chevy. They left with a weapon, and just as GM was stopping street performance, making corporate aerials, and banning big engines in small cars, Don Yenko was already planning his next move, because he wasn't interested in following Detroit's rules. He was interested in changing them. By the mid-1960s, General Motors was worried. The horsepower wars were heating up, but lawsuits and safety concerns were starting to show up. To protect its image and reduce risk, GM took corporate decision. No mid-size cars or pony cars could have an engine larger than 400 cubic inches. It didn't matter what the public wanted. It didn't matter what the competition was doing. The rule was clear: limit the power or risk the consequences. It was a move meant to control the rising tide of muscle. But to Don Yenko, it was corporate fear. While Ford was dropping 428 Cobra Jets and tow Mustangs, and Mopar was cranking out 426 Hemis, GM's dealers were stuck playing by the rules. Cars like the Camaro and the Nova were light, fast, and full of potential, but they were held back by small block engines. And Don Yenko? He hated limits. He believed a car should be built to win, not follow rules. He saw firsthand how buyers were wanting real performance. They didn't want basic models and brochure numbers. They wanted tire smoke, drag strip respect, and quarter-mile wins. So Yenko ignored the suits. He looked at the Camaro and saw a blank canvas. And if GM wouldn't build the car people actually wanted, he decided he would. Not in a factory, not in a boardroom, but in the back of his dealership, where the rules didn't reach. And what he created next will become a legend. In 1967, Don Yenko launched what would become one of the most feared names in American muscle car history, the Yenko Camaro. Started with Chevrolet's standard SS 396 model, then tore it apart in the back office Canonsburg, Pennsylvania Dallas. Out went the 396, in went the L72427 big block V8 Corvette big block engine rated at 425 horsepower, but known to make much more. These weren't just engine swaps, they were complete performance makers. Upgraded rear ends, heavy-duty suspensions, M21 for speeds, custom stripes, badges, and a cowl hood thatlet. You know, this wasn't your average Camaro to the average buyer. It looked like a slightly changed Chevy, but to anyone who knew what it was a bullet with a bow tie. Yenko only built 54 of these cars in 1967, but their impact was immediate. Drag racers grabbed them up. Word spread across the country. A Yenko Camaro just fast. It was dangerous. And best of all, it looked factory. That meant it could sneak up on anything. Ford, Mopar, Pontiac, didn't matter. "I fit," said Yenko on the fender. You were already too late. Don Yenko didn't build cars for showrooms. He built them for war. His changed Camaros began tearing up drag strips across the country. From Pennsylvania to California, Yenko Tunadmakians were beating everything in their lane. These weren't just hot rods. They were killers with license plates, track-ready, street-legal, and brutal life-active. Drag racers loved them because they were consistent. Car guys loved them because they were rare. Gearheads respected them because they weren't born in a GM factory. They weren't made in rebellion. And the best part? They looked like any other SS Camaro until the light turned green. Every wind built, the legend.car magazines took notice. Other dealers strayed to copy his moves. But there was only one Don Yenko, and he wasn't done. Yenko's cars didn't just win races. They built a reputation. If you showed up at a track with a Yenko badge on your car, you didn't need to talk trash. You didn't need to rev your engine. Everyone already knew what time it was. Skabi, now Don Yenko's name, didn't just represent performance. It represented fare. By 1969, Don Yenko was Don Meckling engines. Swapping 396 SHR, 427 SWAs, expensive, time-consuming, and hard work. But then he found a crack in GM's armor. It was called COPO, the Central Office Production Order System, originally designed for fleet managers to customize work trucks and police cars. It let dealerships order special equipment outside of normal production rules. It was never meant for performance. But Yenko wasn't looking for permission. He was looking for a way-in. He submitted a COPO request that Chevrolet didn't expect. Camaros with 72427 installed directly at the factory, Rideau race. No swaps needed. Credibly, it was approved. Whether it was oversight, not caring, or quiet help, GM-LET it happened. In 1969, Yenko's COPO Camaros rolled off the assembly line with all the firepower used to install by hand. They came with heavy-duty cooling, beefed-up rear axles, close ratio, Muncie 4-speeds, and dry-enforced suspensions. He added his own branding, Yenko, skeckles, headrest embroidery, special gauge clusters, and sold them like no one else could. These weren't dealerships anymore. They were factory-authorized muscle missiles, and just like that, Don Yenko had TURNEDGM's own system into his personal speed pipeline. Don Yenko didn't believe in limits, especially not to just one model. After cracking the COPO code with Camaros, it earned 2 other platforms. First up, the Chevy Nova. Compact, lightweight, unassuming, it was the perfect sleeper. Into this little car, he stuffed the same 427 big block. Salt, a 3,000 pounds rocket with more torque than traction. The Yenko Noverne. It's nicknamed Fast Giant Killer. Then came the Yenko Chevelle. Already a respected mid-size powerhouse, the Chevelle was strong. But not Yenko strong. Using the COPO system, Yenko ordered them with 427s, beefed up the internals, and tuned them to perfection. His badges and stripes made them stand out. But the real noise came from Thiekshausen. With these new models, Yenko had officially built a 3-car war chest, each one tailored for a different kind of buyer, but all carrying the same DNA: violent acceleration, underground origins, and no tolerance for excuses. The Novas were the underdogs. The Camaros were the assassins. The Kevals, they were blunt force trauma on wheels. And GM, they were starting to sweet. Don Yenko had gone from niche performance dealer to nationality livage legend. And that made people let GM nervous. His cars were everywhere. Racetracks, car shows, magazine covers, even dealership lots, hundreds of miles from Canonsburg, and more importantly, his name was starting to rival GM's own. Yenko wasn't just modifying Chevrolets. He was building a brand inside a brand. He was building it with tools GM had never meant to hand over. Some execs were furious. COPO was designed for fleet orders, not 425 horsepower drag machines. Internal pressure mounted. Corporate lawyers reviewed every loophole. Behind closed doors, there were serious talks about closing the system altogether, or at the very least, tightening it so guys like Yenko couldn't slip through again. But Notavirian wanted him gone. Sighed. GM, some engineers and product managers loved what Yenko was doing. It was proof of what Chevy's platforms could relive. He was giving gearheads what they wanted and keeping them loyal to the body. Still, the writing was on the wall. Safety regulations were tightening. Emissions laws were creeping in. Insurance, premiums on big block cars were exploding. The golden age was sunding, and Don Yenko knew it. By the early 1970s, Yenko's factory Lupalua's closing. GM was phasing out comporters. Emissions regulations were tightening, and insurance companies were cracking down on high horsepower cars. But by then, Yenko was no longer just a builder. It was a brand. gearhead became a collector's prize. Every Yenko Camaro, Nova, and Chevelle was numbered, badged, and sold through select dealers. They weren't mass-produced, they were hand-picked, hand-built legends. And because they looked factory, they slipped through inspections, beat expectations, and left tire marks in history. Winners knew what they had. Everyone else? They found out hard way. If you lined up next to a Yenko car at a light, you were about Tolosa drag race. You never knew untold. As time passed, Servim Yenkos became rarer. Stores began hunting for vangs, Copo codes, and original badging. Prices skyrocketed today. An authentic 1969 Yenko Camaro can fetch over $500,000 depending on condition and provenance. Why? Because they weren't just cars. They were rebellion made of steel. It's built by a man who didn't wait for permission. Yenko wasn't just a name anymore. Was a movement? In 1987, Don Yenko boarded a twin-engine Cessna 210, just like Hugh had so many times before. Flying was new to him. He had piloted P-51 Mustangs in World War II, raced Corvettes on the ICCA circuit, and pushed machines past tier limits his entire life. But this flight would be his last. Near Charleston, West Virginia, Yenko's plane ran into bad weather. So the aircraft went down, killing him and 2 passengers on board. The man who hadn't flown into combat and built some of the fastest streetcars of the Muscly era was gone in an instant. He was 59 years old. The car world was stunned. There was no farewell tour, no corporate tribute, just silence. And then echoes. People realized that Yenko wasn't just a tuner or a dealer. He was a visionary, a rebel, a one-man resistance to the dull, sanitized future of factory performance. He didn't chase profits. He chased speed. He didn't follow Detroit's rules. He rewrote them. And while the world moved on to fuel injection and emission controls, a legend had just taken flight and vanished into the clouds. Don Yenko didn't have a boardroom. He didn't have a corporate division. What he had was a vision and the guts to act on it. While GM tiptoed around safety memos and legal exposure, Yenko built the cars they were afraid to build. He turned dealerships into Dino Labs. He cracked their internal systems. He found the fine print and then drove 140 mph THROUGH. It is named still echo Sacris car shows, auctions, and garage walls. The Yenko badge, it doesn't just mean power. It means rebellion, precision, and defiance. In an era when performance was getting muzzled, Yenko kept the flame lit. His cars still to rise quarter miles, still common respect, still drop jaws, because they were never just vehicles. They were statements. They said, "This is with a ponce when one man decides to build something better, no matter what they'll say." Don Yenko didn't just sell muscle cars. He built a brand that alived the very system that tried to stop it. And every time a Yenko roars to life, the world remembers. Legends aren't mass-produced. They're made by rebels, in steel, in smoke, and in defiance.